What the heck is an API? Well, API stands for Application Programming Interface. And in today's video, you're going to learn how to build your very own REST API. To do this, we're going to be using Python, and we're going to integrate SQL Alchemy to handle your database. Stay tuned, because at the end of this video, I'm going to share with you guys how you can test your API before you deploy it using Postman. Welcome back, guys, to the channel. Welcome back, guys, for another episode of Code with Josh. For obvious reasons, I'm Josh, and I'm stoked to have you guys here. That's right, today you're going to be building your very own REST API using Python, and we're going to do all this through interactive code as I break it down for you guys. Real quick, before we dive into the video, if you guys get value from this video, help me out, hit that like button and subscribe. That really does help out my channel within this crazy YouTube algorithm. Now, today, you're not only going to learn what an API is, how it really works, but we're also going to build your own, and we're going to use SQL Alchemy to implement a database on that backend API side. At the end of today's video, I'm going to guide you guys through how you can test your API to make sure it runs through all its scenarios, and to do this, we're going to be using Postman. Guys, the first link in the description, that's my weekly Python newsletter, the Nerd Nook. Head on down there, check it out, and join in on all the action. I write about topics requested by you guys and other trending topics to break it all down, helping you guys get further, faster in Python. All right, let's jump into why you're all here, APIs.
All right, if you guys are just here for the code, use the timestamps below, but these first few minutes I've dedicated to actually helping you understand what an API is and how it works before we jump into the code, okay? So use the timestamps, but the next few minutes are for this. So REST APIs in Python. Firstly, what is an API? Now, an API stands for Application Programming Interface. And really, we are on the computer. We are the client, and we are making a request to the server, and the server is giving us back information. Now, this middle part, this is that API part. It's allowing us on the front end to interact and make a request, go to the backend, our database, find some information, and give it back to the front end. Okay, now this REST, what this really stands for, a RESTful API, is this is a representational state transfer. That's where we get the name REST. Okay, so I'm on the front end. I need to submit or do something with information to a server and get back a response from the server. We know URLs, okay? So an API organizes resources into a unique set of URIs. A URI is a uniform resource identifier. So each of these, we would think, these are URLs, right? Well, kind of, that's true. Notice we start with the first URL, which is, once again, a URI. It's an identifier. And this is the landing page for a website. This is actually my newsletter, so you guys should head on over, check out the Nerd Nook at thenerdnook.io. Another version, another URI is like an extension. Okay, so I'm building a new identifier onto the root URL, the root URI. Okay, so each of these are examples of a URI. So what's happening here is our client, you are making some kind of request to the server. You are making, in this case, a post request to the products URI. You are trying to add a product. This here is an HTTP request. It's a request that we can make to the server through our API. And really, we have four that we deal with. Post allows us to create information. Get allows us to read information. Put is for update, and delete is to delete. These are known as CRUD operations. CRUD is very standard with APIs or databases, which we are going to be using a database today. CRUD, create, read, update, delete. These are your core HTTP methods that we can use. So now every time our client makes a request to the server, each request has an optional HTTP request body that has a custom payload of data. Now this is optional, but it's pretty standard, okay? If I'm trying to give information to my server, it's going to be a custom payload of data. Now this backend interface we are making this API in Python. You could be making this API with other programming languages like JavaScript, for example. We want one language that other languages can understand. Typically for this custom payload of data, this is done through JSON. JSON is JavaScript Object Notation, and it looks like this. Okay, so this is a way for us to store data in a special format called JSON that other languages can use. So if I'm building my API in Python, maybe there's an API in JavaScript, or that front end of your application is built in JavaScript. They need to be able to communicate and read the information. That's done typically with JSON. The great thing about JSON is it's just like a Python dictionary. If you know how a dictionary works, what a dictionary is, it looks and acts very, very similar. All right, so this is going to make it so much easier. We have a key, we have a value, it's a key pair. All right. Okay, so what is happening? We know that when the client makes a request, okay, they're making a post request. This is our URI, right? So they're making an HTTP post request to the server. This server is going to give back some type of response. It could give us back that JSON data, but once we go into Postman and we start testing your API, that Postman is going to return a response. 200 is okay. That's a good thing. Okay. If we get 201, that means something different, right? 201 is we create a new resource. But the most common ones we want to see, well, I want to see 200. If we see 400, it means something was wrong with the request to the server. If we see 500, it means something is wrong with the server itself. All right. Now, for our last slide, remember, our API is a way to really communicate between front end and the server. Right? If I write my API, Python is for the back end. Our API is for the back end. So Python is the back end that can communicate to a server. Our front end is usually written in JavaScript. So on the front end, if I try to get information, right, the front end is what has access to the specific URI. I'm trying to get a destination by the ID. But you're like, wait, Josh, where's the URL? Where's the rest of this? The domain that you're used to, like www.google.com, the domain is actually held by the backend. The backend is responsible for holding and housing the domain. So here would be your domain in the backend, right? The front end is making a request that's giving you a new URI. It's a get. It's trying to get a destination. This is your URI. And this URI is going into the backend, right? That's really the interaction we have here between front and back end. Okay, I hope that is a good, simple introduction for you guys into REST APIs. Let's now jump into VS Code, start building out your very own API. All right, here we are, guys, building out your first Python API. Now, to get things started, what we want to do is I'm going to create a virtual environment. Okay, so I'm in VS Code, I have my Python file, and I'm in a folder called Python API. Whatever you name your folder, that's okay. But we want to open our terminal up and we want to create us a virtual environment to house everything. So Python 3-m venv and then the name of your virtual environment. So I could call this API environment. Enter. This is going to set up our virtual environment, and you're going to see that a folder was actually created over here. Okay, now once it's done creating this folder, we want to access this. We want to go into our virtual environment. So I'm going to say source, type the name of our virtual environment, API env/bin/activate. Okay, and now you can see here we are inside our virtual environment. To make sure that we are right, typically I'll do like pip3 list, and let's see all the dependencies that we have installed. Currently we have none except pip. Okay, so in this returns here, you're going to see we have nothing, but we do need to import and install 2 libraries that we're going to use to build out this API. You can see I have pip. Okay, that's fine. So what we want to install here is we want to first install Flask. Okay, so run that. We need Flask. You may have used this for web apps. This is what we're using to build a REST API. And then we are going to install Flask SQL Alchemy. SQL Alchemy is an ORM, an object relational mapper. I've made a video on this too, guys. I'll try and link that somewhere here. I've done SQL Alchemy on the channel, and on my newsletter as well in the description, I've covered SQL Alchemy. ORMs are really good because they allow us to write Python to work with a database instead of having to write SQL. Okay, so awesome. If I clear that, let's just check that we have everything installed that we want. Awesome. So everything here inside our virtual environment is installed. We can create a freeze file now, or a requirements file. So if we type pip3 freeze greater than requirements.txt, it is going to create a requirements file. What this is anyone else who uses your software and they need to match the environment that you created, they can come to this file here and they can actually just install everything you have to get working with it. Okay, very cool. Let's jump right into it. So at the top of our code, I will close the sidebar there. We don't need that. Let me even zoom in for you guys once more. Okay, so from Flask, we are going to import the Flask app for now. And from Flask SQL Alchemy, we just want to import SQL Alchemy. Okay, just like so. The first thing we need for a Flask app is we need to create an app. This is usually done through an app object. We use the Flask class and we say name, as in the name of the Flask app is going to be referred to as app, right? For now, at the very bottom of our code, to make sure things run smoothly, we will say if name is equal to main. We can just say app.run. To constantly keep our API running, your Flask application running, inside run, it's common we say debug equals true. So it's going to constantly be refreshing. Anytime you make changes, you can click refresh. It should update right there on the server. Now, everything in between here is where we create, well, we will create a database, sure, but if your app didn't have a database, we would create routes. And Flask allows us to work with routes. And really, coming from the lesson part of this, we know a route might be something like HTTPS, thenerdnook.io. Okay, so this is like a route. And this would be the home page of the route. If we had the about page.
If you guys are enjoying this video and getting value, help me out. Hit that like button and subscribe. That really does help out the channel.
You would be expanding on that URI, the Uniform Resource Identifier. Okay, so guys, if you want to head here, this is my newsletter. Okay, check it out. All right. But let's just create a sample route to start things off. We can use the app decorator and we're going to say route. The home route is always a slash. This is just home. So I'm going to create a function for this called home. And for now, let's actually always just return some type of dictionary because we're going to be working with JSON data here. So for now, well, let's just put hello for now. I'll change that briefly. Okay. Run your app. So when I run this, it should run. Just make sure everything's connected, it's working correctly. We should just see home appear. It's going to supply us a URL. There we go. So I'm going to open this URL. Going to bring the page down to see. There we go. Hello. Okay, let me even make this smaller for you guys. Okay, so everything is connected. It's working how we want it to. This is really good. I'm going to keep the terminal running. I'm just going to close it. Okay. The next thing we want to do is we want to set up our database. Now remember, our API is a Python API. This is the backend. So our API has communication with a database that the front end can communicate with our API. Then our API speaks to our database. So we're using SQL Alchemy for this, which is our ORM. This means we can just write pure Python to create this. The first thing we want to do is I want to take my app and I want to set up the configuration for this. So inside here, I'm going to write SQL Alchemy database URI. Not L, this is our uniform resource identifier. And this is going to be equal to the type of database. For this, I'm just going to say it's a SQLite database. And we need the name of your database. So I'm making this project around travel. So I'm just going to call this travel DB. It can be called anything you want, but make sure it ends with the database extension. Okay, so our app has been configured to now accept this SQLite database. I'm going to create a database object. So DB is our database, SQL Alchemy, and we're going to give it our Flask application. Okay, that's what's happening here. Now that we have a database, okay, nothing's going to run yet, we want to create a model. And you can think of a model that houses the information of the database, but more specifically, a model is like a row in the database. It holds a row, okay? So this is done through a class. So I'm going to create a class. Let's call this a destination. And this is going to inherit a model. So anytime I want to refer to anything from SQL Alchemy, we said DB. So this is a db.model. Okay. Coming down here, each model needs columns. Now what I mean by this is, remember, the destination, this model is a row in the database. Each row has columns. So what do I want to see in each column? Every row is going to have an ID. This is going to be unique to every single column. No column will have the same ID. This will help us know the information we're adding and we're deleting from our database. This is a column. So I can say DB column. What type of data is this? This is going to be an integer. Okay. And then I'm going to say primary key is equal to true because this is the primary key of each row. Now I'm saying DB column, DB integer. You could actually import these up here, right? I could be like column and I could get that. That's usually just SQL Alchemy because we're using Flask SQL Alchemy. It's pretty standard that we use the DB object here. So we have an ID. Let's say we have a few other pieces of information. We have the destination, we have the country, and let's say each country has a rating. Okay, so our API will be able to fetch this information, add new information based on the request from the front end application. So everything here is really just a column. I'm going to take this for each of these. We're going to say column, column. All of these are columns in our model. The destination now is going to be a string. You could leave it empty. The destination, for example, if you wanted to say it can only be a maximum of 50 characters, you would put a 50 inside there. And I'm going to say nullable is equal to false. That means this destination can't be empty. For country, I'm going to say the same thing actually, can't be empty. For rating, this time rating is actually it's going to be a float number, right? So it's going to be a decimal. This is also nullable though. We can't have any of this information empty. Great. So our model is built out. Now, I want to be able to convert this into JSON easily. And we know that JSON is a type of data that can work with different languages, but really JSON data is very similar to a Python dictionary. So I'm actually going to create a method here in our class. And this method's job will just be to convert the data into a dictionary format so it's easier for us to convert to JSON. Now, what I actually want, right? So really in our JSON file, I want it to look something like this. It's going to have an ID of one, destination, country, rating. And there's going to be many of these in our JSON file. So really, I'm going to create my ID. The value of the ID is just going to be self.id. We're going to have destination. The value of this is just your destination. We will have country, and the same thing just applies for all of these. Okay, self.country, and then rating. So anytime we call this method, it's going to return a dictionary. This just makes it easier to convert to JSON later. Okay. This is great, guys. So we have a model. Everything is ready to go. The last real thing we need to set up the database is we just need to create a quick context manager to set the actual file up. So I'm going to say with my Flask app, I want to call app context. And inside there, db create all. Okay, that's it. When you run your code now, our database, let me actually trash the terminal. Okay, I'm going to rerun the code. Your database is going to be all set up for our API. Okay, so it's running again, but over here, it creates an instance folder. Inside here is the database. Okay, this is good. Okay. Very, very nice. So let's start building out our routes for this API. So this home route, we just want to return a JSON file if they return home. Okay, so to handle JSON easily, we're actually going to go up to the top here. And along with Flask, I'm going to import two things. Flask has something called JSONify. This converts things into a JSON format. And then we're going to import request so we can make our HTTP requests. Remember that we have four. We have get, post, put, and delete. This is going to help us handle those better. Okay, so returning down here to home now. Originally, I was just returning a string, but this time let's actually return some JSON. So I'm going to say JSONify is a function. I'm going to give it a dictionary. This is just going to be JSON. And let's just give it a message for now. And let's just say welcome to the travel API. Okay, so anytime I go home, it's going to return this. Now to quickly check for this, our server is still running. This is good. There you go. There is our JSON data. Okay, it's being supplied there on our screen. Okay, cool. So our next route. Okay, so let's now imagine that our URL is like https:// let's pretend we're working with the nerdnook again. Okay, so the nerdnook.io. So this is home, right? It ends in a slash. This is the slash. Let's say we wanted to add an extension of this. Okay, so I'm going to actually take this down for the next one. And let's say we want to add destinations. So I want to return all the destinations that we have sent to our API that are in our database. We're going to create a new route. Now this time, instead of slash, we want to build the URI out. So destinations, just like that. Okay. And additionally, we need to give it methods. Now this is your HTTP stuff. What do we want to do? We want to get information. So we want to use the get method. Down there, we're going to say get destinations. Okay, and to get the destinations from our database, we are going to say, oh, not that, destinations is equal to our class, destination. We want to query, and I want to get everything. Okay, so query all. So it's going to fetch every row in the database. Now, we do want to return this data in a JSON format. So I'm going to return JSONify, and inside there, now this is going to return rows of dictionaries. So we're going to say destination dot toDict. We made a method above in our class called toDictionary, and let's just loop through. So for every destination in all of our destinations, okay, each row is a dictionary, but then we convert it to JSON to handle it appropriately. Okay, cool. That's really it. That's your get destinations. We are getting data. Okay. Let's say now that we want to get a specific destination. If we go up here to our class, remember that each row has an ID. We can search for a destination, let's say in this case, by ID. So in this route, what it might look like is it's going to be like ID 2, for example. So what we want to do here is I'm going to say at route. Inside there, we're going to say destinations, but this time we're going to add the extension. We are going to give it an integer, which is really the destination ID. Okay, so that's being dropped in there. The same method actually applies here because we still want to get that method. Okay, not methods, methods. Okay. Now, this is a single destination. So what we're going to do here is say def. This time, let's say get destination. Let's keep that singular there. In order to get the destination, okay, how can we access our database? We need to make a query to our database. So we're going to say destination is equal to our class destination. We're going to make a query and we want to get. What do we want to get? We want to get the destination ID. Okay. Now notice we haven't collected this yet. This should be our parameter. Okay. So I'm going to say destination ID just right there. Okay. If that's true, okay, so if that returns us a value, then we are going to return the JSON version of that. So I'm just going to say destination.toDict, okay, calling that method there. Else we didn't get anything back, so we're just going to return, let's just return some JSON that says like a error, and we can just say destination not found. Okay. Outside all that, what type of error? You could put like a 404 error message that you would get standard. Okay, cool. So moving on now, okay. This time we want to send information to our API. So this is a post request. So I'm going to come down here. Let's say we want to add new information to our database through our API. We're going to say destination, okay? But the difference is our methods, instead of saying get, these are going to be a post request. All right, we're going to make a new request here. Let's say here add destination, okay, adding 1. And this data is gonna get all of our. I wanna be able to parse the incoming JSON body to extract the data. Okay, so this is gonna take request, and we're just gonna get the JSON format of that. So this is taking the incoming JSON body, and it's gonna be able to parse that information. And I want to create a new object using that so we can insert this into our database. So let's just say new destination. This is a new object. Destination is equal to our model destination. We don't need to give it ID. That naturally occurs, but we do need to give it a destination. The destination is just going to be equal to our incoming data. And we're going to say the key is destination. We need to give it a country. So this is equal to our incoming data, our country, and then lastly, we need to give it a rating. Okay, just like this. Cool. Okay, so this is our new object. Now, because we're working with a database, we need to insert this new object as a record into the database. So taking your DB, your database, we want to tap into the current session that we're on. And we just want to add. What do we want to add? New destination. Anytime we do anything to the database, we are going to say session, we want to commit back to the database. And then the database has all this information now, so we can return the JSON data, the record that we just added here. And we can just say new destination dot toDict format. It was a success, so let's say like 201. Okay. That's it, guys. Cool. We have 2 more functionalities for our API. All right, so coming down here, we have post. Let's practice using put. Okay, so put, remember, that just really means to update something. So in this time, let's say app, let's create a route to create this update. Let's say /destinations. Okay, we're going to build on that. We want to update by ID, right? So that's an integer, and we're going to give it a destination ID. ID. And this, we needs a methods. So this is going to be a put method. Okay. Let's create a new route. Let's just call this update destination. This is going to take a destination ID. And really what we want to do again is we want to parse the incoming JSON data. So I'm going to say request.get, where are we at there? Get JSON. And really it's going to give us this data back, and I'm going to fetch the destination with the ID that we actually give it. So I'm going to say here, let's just create destination. This is equal to our destination model. I want to make a query. I want to get anywhere that matches the ID we give it. If that's positive, that's true, that gives us back the information we want to continue. So I want to be able to update the fields of the destination that we give this here. Right, so let's just tap into the destination. That's an object. This object has a property of destination as well. So we're tapping into the property of the class up top here. So our object is destination. The property is also destination. Once we have tapped into this property, then we're going to take our data and we want to get the destination and access the property again. Where am I? Destination nation. Cool, done. Pretty much the same thing applies here for country and rating. Okay, so I'm going to drop these two. And I'm just going to go through here, and I'm going to change this to become country. And this should be country as well. And then we're going to go here, and this is going to be rating. Okay, so rating. Done. Okay, cool. So we've made changes again. So remember that we want to tap into the current session, and we want to commit the current changes, and we can return the JSON version of this. So let's take our destination. Let's call our toDict method that we made. That's really going to handle most of it for us. All right. So if it doesn't return anything, we can do what we did before. What did we do before? Right here. We can just return this. That's fine. Okay. So our update destination is done. Cool. This takes us into our last route. The last thing that our API should be able to handle, remember, it's handling CRUD operations: create, read, update, delete. We need the ability to delete from the database through our API. So we can create the final route. This will be destinations. How do we delete? Once again, we're going to delete by integer with an ID, destination ID. And for the methods for this is a delete method. Okay. Now for our routes, let's just call it delete destination. This needs a destination ID of how we're deleting. Let's create a destination object by making a query. So, there we go. Destination. We want to query and we want to get by the destination ID. Great, just like we've done in the previous ones. If we have a destination, that's true, then we just have to tap into our session and we have to delete it. What are we deleting? We are deleting the destination. We've made changes to our database, so we need to commit that back to our database. And you can just return them because we don't have the JSON data anymore. It's been deleted. We can just return like a message and we can say, destination was deleted. Okay. Else we will finally just return some other, and let's just put here, we've done this before. Let's just return this error message. Cool. Guys, that's it. This is our API. Okay, we have performed CRUD operations. We set up our database to handle this. So if we had a front end for our API, that would be sending information to the API to handle. And then the API would be able to handle those CRUD operations through our database and return things to the front end. Okay, so our code is done. Let's jump into Postman so you can see how we can test our API to make sure it's working. All right, in order to test our API, you need to make sure that you are running again. Okay, so I closed it originally. I am now running now. If you want to open it there on Safari, you can. That's fine. But what we really need is I need this URL. And we can go over to Postman. Now I have the Postman app already installed. Okay, so I am using this Postman. Now what we want to do here is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to press the plus. We want to create a new collection here. Here was my testing previously. I'm just going to delete that. Okay, to keep this new. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put me over here. Okay. If you want to click save, you can. Okay, it's going to ask for a name. And this is where originally I had the name of our API. So travel API. Okay, and I'm adding it to our new collection. That's fine. Save. You can see it's been generated over here. Okay, now the current URL, your local host, we're going to put it right inside here. Okay, and you can see here, these are all the HTTP commands. So if I get and I make a send, okay, everything is okay. You can see our symbol okay, and we are returning the home message that we have there. This is good, okay? Now let's say we want to test the other functionalities of our application. Okay, so up top here, remember, if I go back and I say destinations, this is a different route that we made. Our URI, Uniform Resource Identifier, is changing. This time, maybe we want to post data. So I want to check my API's ability to post data. In order to post data, so currently if I run this, let's just run it. Okay, you can see, right, I'm not giving it anything. There's nothing to give it. Under here, I'm going to go to body and I'm going to click raw. Inside raw, I'm going to paste an example of what my API should be sending, or the information I should be sending. We have a destination, a country, and a rating. Now when I click send, there, 201, we have created a resource in our database. This is great, right? If I wanted to change it, let's do this time, I'm doing a city. Let's do Paris. Let's do France. Let's say like a 4.2. Okay. I'm going to send the information again. Okay. So, and you can see the ID changed, right? I added a different resource. So the post is working. This part of our API is indeed working. Okay. Let's now get all the destinations back. Okay. So if I go back to get, we've added 2 resources. If I click send, you can see, okay, so now we have, none destinations send. Okay, we're getting an internal error. Okay, let's go back. Let me actually check our method. Get resource. So we are, okay, it's a get destinations JSONify for every destination in destination. This is wait a second. No, that's why. Okay, I closed the list early. Okay. So this is all part of the list here. I closed that too early. If I go back here, okay. So destinations, send. I need to kill my server and try it again. Okay, so we're gonna run the server again. I will add some data again, just as a test here. Make sure it's working. So I'm going to copy. Okay, already running. Thank you. That's fine. Copy. I'm going to open up Postman again. So destinations get, well, it is definitely running. So let's go back here. Let's just make sure it's running. Okay, everything's okay. So if I want to post, okay, let's go back to destinations. Okay, so I want to post, okay, here's the last thing I attempted to post. Let's change the destination to Saigon, Vietnam, change the rating, send the information. Okay, so the ID has been updated. It was created again. This time, let's get all the information. Okay, so I'm going to change this to get. Let's make sure. Boom. Okay. So that was our issue. Okay. It was just my list from previously. You can see that when we get back all those destinations, I've added 3 times. So this is our JSON list and it has all of our JSON data. We know the API is working correctly. Okay. All right. So we have tested the posting, the getting. Let's try to let's get by an ID. So for example, if I say 3, can I get that back? There we go. We get the ID back of that. Let's try and do an update. So let's update number 3 here. Let's change this to put. Okay. Let's actually edit this. So instead of Saigon, I am going to put here Hanoi, Vietnam. And I'm going to change this to a 4.1. Let's send it back. Boom. You can see it was updated. This is great. Now when we go back and I get all the destinations, error. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. Okay, it returns everything back to us, and you can see the update took effect. All right, let's do the last one. We have a delete. Let's delete the first destination, which is Tokyo. There we go. Destination was deleted. We go back to get all of our destinations, running our code. Voila, we have our 2. Our API is working. Well done, guys.
Unreal, guys. There we have built and gone through setting up your own REST API. Not only did you learn what an API is and how everything really works, but you got the chance to build your own using Flask, integrate a database with SQL Alchemy, and then test your API for deployment using Postman. I had a ton of fun in this video. Drop a comment. Let me know any questions you guys have. I love engaging with you guys down there, helping you if you get stuck. That's what the comments are for. Or if you just like the video, let me know and hit that like button. If you're not already subscribed, what are you doing? Subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in next week's episode of Code with Josh. Until then, Python crew, I'll see you then.